had my gun with me. I was going to go take my life. And I'm like, I can't do this. I got to go home. I start having regret and guilt, and I never made it home. Pulled into a parking lot at a truck stop and backed into a spot. So I sat in that parking lot for probably 3 hours with my gun in my mouth. Every time I was getting ready to pull the trigger, a vehicle would come around and their headlights would come into my truck. I pulled that gun out of my mouth because I didn't want somebody to see that. I didn't want to traumatize somebody. Nobody talked to me when I came back. The first day I walked back to the station, one of the guys was sitting there in our dispatch. He goes, "Holy shit, you're back." He had like a horrified look on his face. I don't know what his feeling was. I don't know what caused it. But what I do know is that when I did go back to work, people didn't talk. I started confronting people. Why won't you talk? Well, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I didn't want to trigger you. And it's like, okay, so listen, if you really think that one thing you're going to say and that one conversation you're going to have with me is going to do that, you're a little full of yourself. I'm sorry if you think that you're going to impact my life that much by saying, "Hey man,
right,
welcome back." I didn't even get that.
Today's episode of Minds on the Frontline brings you a raw and powerful story of crisis, recovery, and the silent battles that many frontline workers face. We welcome Firefighter Cliff VanDeusen as he shares how a traumatic pediatric call in 2021 triggered unresolved trauma, leading to dissociative episodes, a suicide attempt, and a complex PTSD diagnosis. We are also joined by Amanda Davarn, Cliff's clinical therapist, who offers insights into trauma treatment, EMDR, and how clinicians can guide frontline workers back to themselves without trying to fix them. Together, they open the door to honest conversations about healing, support, and how frontline agencies, in many circumstances, can do better when someone comes back from the edge. Cliff's experience is also detailed in an article that he wrote for Firehouse magazine titled "Letting Them Rot," where he speaks out about stigma, silence, and how to treat our own after a mental health crisis. Check out the episode description for a link to the article. Minds on the Frontline is presented by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program, offering 24/7 mental health and crisis support for Michigan's first responders and their families. For more information on FST5, including free access to resources and how to connect, please check out the episode description and follow us on social media. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Cliff, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do, and where do you do it?
Cliff VanDeusen. I'm a captain with Grand Ledge Fire. I've been with them for almost 25 years full-time. I've been with the department since January of 1996. I work in the town that I grew up in.
Yeah, you and Mike are like that.
Yep,
Yeah.
me too.
When I started in 2000, we ran 350 calls a year. This last year, we ran just a few shy of 3,500.
Wow.
That's incredible.
4 guys on, 1 station.
And manpower stay the same?
Actually, a little less because we're running with less volunteers now.
Okay.
And we transport.
Okay.
How many Alpha units are you riding?
2. So
2 are doing 3,500 calls a year? That's a busy. That's a
And
small town is creating
we
such
are
a busy...
averaging 10 calls a day.
Wow. That's a lot for 2 trucks.
It is. And the officer, me, I'm jumping from engine to second out ALS truck.
Oh, wow. For those that might not know, that's a busy truck. That's somebody who's going on a bunch of calls. You've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you're also a dad, husband?
I've been married for 32 years
Wow.
to my high school sweetheart. Actually, I know. It's kind of crazy how she's put up with me for this long. She can't put a pillow over my face now because I have that CPAP, so I can breathe no matter what.
Yes.
So.
Makes it a lot harder. She's just got to kink the tube now.
Yeah. I have 2 daughters, a 30-year-old and a 25-year-old. Both doing well. My oldest is going to make me a grandpa this year.
Congratulations.
I'm going to have a grandson in September, October. My youngest decided to be a nurse. I told her she can be a nurse. She just can't work in an ER, ever. I see how the nurses are treated, and I have a lot of respect for them, but I hate how they're treated.
It's a tough job.
You saying that just the generic job of being an ER nurse has so many angles of stress.
Yeah, I mean,
that's true.
You think about administration, they're horrible to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not the nicest sometimes when we come in.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And then the patients we take in. I mean, we
and
don't always take
inundated and they're beat up, and it's a
constant.
tough gig, man.
So I told her no. So she decided to work on a cancer floor.
Oh. Okay.
And she's been doing that for a little over a year. Now she's going to go to the NICU. My wife has produced a great family.
I know that feeling. I have an amazing wife that makes my 2 daughters as best they can be.
So you're cursed too.
I am.
2 daughters.
But we have been in enough people's homes in their golden years. Who's there first? The son or the daughter? The daughters. Mm-hmm. The daughters take care of you in the long run.
That is true. That is true.
And then if you don't have a daughter, you just hope you have a really good daughter-in-law.
Oh, yeah. My family would take my wife over me in a heartbeat. Actually, they have, as a matter of fact. So
that means you won. That's how cool she is.
Oh, I hit the jackpot.
Right on.
In every relationship, there's a reacher and a settler.
Right.
I know I reached and she settled. I'm good with that.
Firefighters tend to outkick their coverage, if you will.
Boy.
Yes, for sure.
Well, let's see who you brought here with you today. This is kind of an interesting episode because you're the second person, technically, to bring in their clinician onto the podcast, but really the first real guest to do so, and then walk through life circumstances to highlight a lot of different things between inpatient to recovery to a long, healthy life. But let's talk about one of the people that helped facilitate that with you. Amanda, please introduce yourself, who you are, and what you do.
I'm Amanda Davarn. I'm a licensed professional counselor and also have been an EMT since 2011. And Cliff stumbled into my life the day that everything hit the fan. It's been such a great learning experience for me. Always working with first responders, knew that's who I wanted to work with, were my people. I still do EMS on the side. And he and I together have really done what we always wanted to do, because he told me multiple times in his first session, he's obviously given me permission to talk about his case because we are a very story-based culture. He said multiple times in his first session that if he could keep even one person from feeling the way he was feeling, it was going to be worth it. And I told him, I was like, the universe is telling me that we are going to accomplish some really amazing things together in the future. Don't know what those look like yet, but I just have a lot of faith. And here we are a year and a half later doing exactly that and touching our community in ways that neither one of us could have ever dreamed back then. So I'm so excited to be here with him to support his story because it's going to make such a huge impact.
Well, the fact that you guys are here means that Cliff's doing pretty well.
Yes, from a clinical perspective, he is doing really, really well. He puts the work in. I mean, he is a lead by example kind of guy. So I so appreciate him letting me use his story to touch other people that I work with in practice. But now he's out there with his own story from his own perspective. And it's been really, really cool to see the feedback that he's getting. So I'm honored to be here with him.
We're honored to have you here. We're glad that you came. Well, let's talk about it. Let's go back to May of 2022. What went on?
On duty that day, we had a pretty traumatic call come in. It was a school bus pedestrian accident. 8-year-old boy got run over by a school bus on his bike, heading home from school. The scene was like literally something from hell. And I say that because the school buses were leaving the school. This was like one of the first or second ones leaving. So we had a line of school buses full of kids. I mean, tons of people around. They all watched this kid get run over, front tire, back tires of the school bus before they stopped. When I arrived on the truck, my ambulance was there. I got there, I called command, I start walking up to the scene, and, it's hectic. You can see what's going on. And what I seen was not what was going on. The body that I seen was a kid from years ago that we had a call. Like, literally, that's what I seen. I did not see this kid laying there. I didn't see the bike. I didn't see anything but the kid from many years ago. He was in school with my daughter, the first kid from preschool, and he was tragically killed when he was 12. So that was a messed up thing. It took me, some time. I had to shake it off, what's going on here? I didn't really realize what was happening. Finally, I was able to shake it off, do my job, and that's kind of where it started. I'd already been involved with peer support, doing stuff, and from the scene, once my ambulance transported, I'd already started making the calls for peer support to show up to the station, working on all of that, trying to get my guys what they needed. Mm-hmm. Wasn't worried about me. I didn't really think about me.
That's an easy avoidance technique, right?
Oh, yeah.
To go into a mode, to follow your SOPs, to then take command. Oh, I got this. Papa Bear's got it. Yeah, it's an easy way to hide.
Yeah. So it was just kind of a crappy call. The outcome of it, of course, he didn't make it. He actually should have been pronounced there, but it was really the right thing to transport.
Well, it's a kid. You're going to work that no matter what.
Well, you're at least going to
exactly.
certainly going to transport because you don't. There's this. You got to give everybody watching a little bit of closure. That
exactly.
It's a lot.
There was nothing they could have done. Nothing the hospital could have done.
Yeah.
He should have been called there. Except for the fact,
and those are the situations that I've had with many ER doctors. Like, oh no, you transport that away. This is the right thing. There's the technical right thing, and then there's the right thing that everybody's on the same page with.
It's the moral right thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Although, if you really think about it, though, because now my medics on that ambulance are like, we don't transport dead people. Why are we doing? They're going against protocol. So they had a problem with that. It was.
And for people listening that don't have that context, when somebody is deceased in the field and we are working them, for lack of a better phrase for everybody, we do so because we can provide the best level of care on scene right there rather than trying to do it while we're transporting. Then there's times where they meet criteria for obviously deceased and it's time to terminate efforts. We don't want to just do that in the middle of a busy road with hundreds of kids and parents watching.
Yes.
We're now going to transport, quote unquote, at least remove this situation and provide a mental closure. Doc, would you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. You're vicariously traumatizing a lot of people. So to have that body staying there would have been even more traumatizing for the civilians, especially.
Right. So the right thing to do. It's one of those weird gray areas that I don't think anybody in the world would prosecute that you're breaking protocol.
Oh, absolutely
right?
not. No.
So, but this situation you were in wasn't, like you said, the situation. It was a trigger to previous experiences. You recall one, but I'm guessing this is the accumulation of many things.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Let's talk
Over the
about
years.
the build up to that and where that kind of comes from, and then we'll work on past that.
I sit back and I try to think about calls, old calls from years and years ago. That it's one of those things, and in an article I wrote, we'll talk about a little bit later, but, people want you to think about all the people that you save. Those aren't the ones that you think about, and it's not by choice. You don't have that choice. You don't get to think about that. What happens is the ones that haunt you, the ones you can't save, the ones that, unfortunately, are pronounced there on a scene or something like that. Nightmares. Dissociative episodes when you're driving and you realize you're driving up on this spot and it's just like you blank out. A couple minutes later, you're like past it. You're already at your destination. You're like, how the hell did I get here? I sit back and I think about calls that I know may have bothered me, but early in our career, we can deal with it the way that we were taught when I came in. Now, you guys are both a little younger than me, but...
Oh, no, it was the same. Keep your mouth shut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was an old school mentality when we got started.
And it still is, unfortunately, because we don't talk with our people like we should.
It's certainly not gone.
It's not. So I sit back and I try to think about these things, and the ones that really stand out are the ones that, like this other one, seeing a body that isn't there, that messes you up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knowing that you're seeing a body that isn't there and trying to keep it all together while you're probably in command, you're the IC of this situation.
Yeah.
Critical.
That's a situation.
Yeah.
Just based on the amount of traffic you have to deal with. Because think of how many cars, how many buses, how many...
Absolutely.
We've all been in that parking lot full of kids, and you said it's the end of school day.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy we don't have more accidents.
Well, and like you talked about, I think a lot of times, obviously now we have peer support and we have CISM and we do it and it helps. But I think sometimes you have those runs that you tucked away years ago. You didn't even know that you tucked them away
before we were doing.
That's what I mean. That's what
CISM,
I'm saying. And now the situation happens, and all of a sudden that run from 12 years ago that you never dealt with 12 years ago, that you probably didn't give a second or third thought to, all of a sudden is now in the forefront of your head, and that's tough. Absolutely.
So one thing you mentioned was that you were already a peer support team member for your department.
Correct.
And so it's not like that gave you some type of emotional armor, right?
No, it made it worse, actually. I mean, I'm the captain on the day. So for me, my job is to take care of my people.
No, it's a mentality.
It is. And that's what I do. It doesn't matter. Like right now, we're sitting here and you guys are my people now. I'm going to do everything I can to protect you. And it's killing me that my back is to the door. So
no, but I think when you have those leadership roles, I'm a captain at our place. You look at them, not to sound bad, but you look at them as like your kids. Yeah. Your job is to take care of them. Your job is to make sure they go home safe the next morning. They're taken care of. All their needs are met, whatever it might be. You know, I'll come second. I got to take care of you guys first. Right. But I think what that also does is you also don't necessarily allow yourself to let the guard down. You know what I mean? Well, you don't allow yourself to be like, okay, I need help, right?
Well, there's a little bit more to this story though. So my guys transport, me and one other guy stay on scene. We're there with PD as they're doing their investigation. We're there for quite a long time because
there's a fatal. There's a lot of time.
A lot of investigation,
and we have to flush the road. There's not a lot of.
And is that not one of the worst things to have to do?
It is, but it's something that we've all done, and it gives that part of that closure.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough having to do a wash down.
It is. So we're there for hours, and my goal is to make sure that nobody else is traumatized on this. It's my job. Our chief decides to send another crew over that he's going to have them do the wash down now and order me back because they're waiting on me to do peer support. It's not how peer support works. You don't force somebody. I was ordered to go in and do. You can't do that. So it was tough. A lot of resentment there.
Like a logistical overlook, maybe.
Not knowing the process.
It's an oversight. You know, I don't think anybody did it maliciously, but what you're saying is you got to have an understanding of a true understanding and appreciation at the highest administrative level to assure that we're not duplicating an effort for somebody in an extremely stressful situation.
Yes,
and that's where we really need the administrative help. In my opinion, is the biggest thing administration can do is really look at these like moving parts and SOPs. Don't just say it's on paper and we have a person respond. What if it's the person who's supposed to respond is the one in the middle of it?
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, we don't use peer supporters from my department on a call for my department.
You use like a mutual aid, somebody comes
over.
So
we actually, the team that I belong to, we're a multi-jurisdictional. We cover 3 counties. Okay. Eaton, Ingham, and Clinton.
So you have smaller departments, so you're making do with the network.
Like a regional type team.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So it's called Capillary Peer Support. It's a great little organization. I mean, we've done a really great job at getting the word out there, and unfortunately in the last couple of weeks, we've done a lot of schisms, like a lot. We've actually been as far as Bay City, Grand Rapids. We've helped over. I mean, people need the help. We're going to go.
Yeah.
So it's just how it goes. So, but when the administration thinks that they know better than their resident expert,
you do run into some problems.
Yes.
Yeah. So that certainly could happen, and it's such a new thing. It's not like a tech team leader where this is like, I don't know, like a 30-year science now, basically. The chief can look at the tech team guy and go, what do you need? But the peer support person in this new team that's less than 5 years old, or generically saying, is probably tougher for a chief to yield that expertise at this point. So I can understand it maybe, and they're reacting and they're trying to be their Papa Bear, but I get that. But let's get into your breaking point. So leading up in life, you had a number of calls. You had the circumstances of real life add up, and then eventually you have a little bit of a psychosis there that sits with you for a little over a year and a half. And in September 2023, you have a full-blown mental breakdown, hospitalized with a diagnosis of complex PTSD. So did you get any help after that professionally, after the event that happened in 2022, knowing that you were having that? And then, tell us what happened in 2023.
So in 2023, I started the year off with an on-the-job injury, ended up off for quite a long time because I had a knee replacement. Not being around the guys, that screws you up enough. So when I go back to work, things just are not flowing well. Everything just kind of is building.
So what did you notice from the time of that call up to September 2023?
I literally say my life imploded.
Right.
Yeah. So what I look back now and see is lack of sleep, lack of eating. I stopped taking care of myself. I stopped working out. I worked out for years, 7 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. Constantly eating great. I was in the best physical shape of my life. And I say physical because I did it because that's how I dealt with things. That's how I masked.
Well, it's certainly a healthy way to kind of try to mitigate stress.
So I noticed that I had stopped doing that kind of stuff. I stopped doing my normal things. I wasn't eating, didn't sleep. In August of 2023, I attended the SHIFT conference up in Marquette.
What is the SHIFT conference?
So the SHIFT conference is put on by my REMS, and Frontline Strong is up there with them.
That's the Michigan Rural EMS Systems.
Look at you go, you know.
Oh, we
I've
know.
done work with them.
I know, they're great people. They're great people. So up there, a lot of stories being told, and I started feeling them. One of the guys that really hit me hard was Lieutenant Justin Templeton from Oxford. Yeah, great guy.
I've known Justin a very long time.
Yeah, I stay in contact with him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But his story really hit, and it just started the floodgates. And for me, that's the beginning of when everything started imploding. I had a gambling problem going on. Things were just crushing now. And as that weekend came to an end, I'm on my way home. I decide to get a hold of our clinician for our team, and she got me a referral with Amanda. On September 6th, I have my appointment with Amanda, my very first one. I remember going. I don't remember anything I said. I remember very little from that. And that night, everything just done.
So you recognized something was coming. You reached out for help. You sat down with Amanda. And then your body's like, all right. Do you think it was like kind of like I can let go now because I'm about to get help? What do you think you attribute that to?
Everything kind of felt worse to me after that first meeting. I didn't know what to think. I did.
Because it all got brought to the surface and you had to look at it. You couldn't go gamble. You couldn't go work out. You couldn't go do those things.
Did it almost make you feel like less of a responder, less of you finally had to admit, man, there's something wrong. Like there's,
Yes. Yeah, but for me, what happened was so you had said I had a diagnosis, which I did, complex PTSD with dissociative episodes. So, a lot of the gambling I did, I didn't know I did it. Mm-hmm. I'd wake up in the morning and find out that I spent a shit ton of money.
Now, were you drinking heavily?
No.
Really?
No, I was drinking less, according to my wife.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so
well, it's a change in personality.
So it's September 2023. You walk us into all of those things going on, meeting Amanda, and then ended up in the hospital.
So later that night, I ended up leaving my house. My wife was sleeping on the couch. I left the house. I turned location off on my phone, on my watch, on my iPad. I took money out of the bank.
All in a dissociative episode.
Didn't know I did any of this stuff. Filled my truck up with fuel. I don't know where I was
myopically mission-oriented.
Yeah. When I kind of recognized where I was at, I was, 30 miles northwest of where I live in Grand Ledge. And I remember driving through the city of Ionia. So as I'm driving through Ionia, I drive past the fairgrounds entrance. And I remember a cop sitting there. And I just started crying and praying and begging for him to pull me over. He didn't. I mean, I was pretty pissed at him. I wanted him to take my gun from me. I wanted him to get me help. Mm-hmm. After that, I don't remember anything until I was another hour and a half north of there at 66 and 46 Edmore. And I come to him like, I know now where I'm at. I know where I'm heading. I was heading to my deer camp up by Fife Lake.
Okay.
Had my gun with me. I was going to go take my life.
Wow.
And I'm like, I can't do this. I got to go home. I got to go home. So I started heading back home. I'm heading towards Elma. As I start heading that way, I start having regret and guilt. And I never made it home. I made it probably 5-6 miles from the house and pulled into a parking lot at a truck stop and backed into a spot. I ended up texting my wife, our fire department chaplain, and my chief, asking for help. And turns out, like, they had called me and texted me from the time that they figured out I was gone. but I never seen it. I mean, phones come through on vehicles nowadays. Never seen it.
Yeah.
That's how out of it I was.
You didn't acknowledge it. You didn't register it.
Yeah.
Didn't register it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I sat in that parking lot for probably 3 hours with my gun in my mouth. Every time I was getting ready to pull the trigger, a vehicle would come around and their headlights would come into my truck. And I pulled that gun out of my mouth because I didn't want somebody to see that. I didn't want to traumatize somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, after about 3 hours, my wife called me. She woke up and called me, and took a long time for her to get me to come home.
She saw the text. Like, she was middle of the night. She notices the
Okay.
text. Oh, my God.
Yes.
Calls you immediately. Okay.
Yep. A long time, hour and a half, 2 hours. She got me home. I walked in through the back door, and like instant shame, guilt. I couldn't look at her.
Mm-hmm.
I spun around and hid my face into a cupboard where, she got me to turn around, and that hug was like the first time I'd felt something in so long. Like, there was feeling. And I just broke down, like sobbing, and I hadn't slept. I think there towards the end, between end of August and that night, I think maybe if I had 2 or 3 hours of sleep total, 26th of August to the 7th of September.
You're falling apart.
Yeah. You're
no wonder you're disassociated.
I wasn't.
Yes.
I wasn't
It's
eating.
easy to when you're in a
lack of sleep.
So then now I, for a long time after I get help and everything, I thought to myself, maybe this didn't really happen. Maybe I just passed out and it was just nightmare, because I had nightmares all the time. I didn't really want to know for the longest time if I really actually had that gun in my mouth, until I got my weapons back about 3 months ago. I pulled that gun out of my holster and there was lip marks on it, and that's
tough here.
so I put it back in the holster. I set it down. I cleaned some other ones, and then about a half hour, 40 minutes go by. I pulled it out, didn't even look at it, pulled it apart, cleaned it, and I'm okay. I'm okay with it. It's just, it was hard to actually say, yeah,
see
this
evidence
happened.
of a situation that actually,
Yeah. So
the reality of that weight.
my wife takes me onto the couch. We sit there. I actually pass out on her lap, wake up about an hour and a half later. I said, I need help. I told her who to call, what to do. She took me into the ER, still really not with it, because not much sleep.
Yeah.
Not eating, not sleeping. You got to have fuel. You got to have rest. And I didn't have any of it. Spent probably 18 hours, I think, something like that, in the ER psych unit till they transferred me to an adult psych unit to a different campus for 6 days. Left there, was home a couple days, and went to the IFF Center of Excellence in Maryland.
Okay.
Spent 37 days there.
No, Amanda, were you involved in any of this while he was at the hospital? You just met him.
I'd met him the day before all of this, and he was raw when he left
Yeah.
my office. Like I said, nothing that either one of us would have anticipated. He was not suicidal at the time that he was at my office, because I did my due diligence, right?
Sure.
But he called the next day, and someone called, and I was getting a call from the Sparrow Hospital main line, because again, I happened to be there. I'm always at Sparrow Main apparently when some crisis happens, because I was there with my grandmother, and someone was just sobbing hysterically on the other end of the line, and it took me a minute to figure out who it was. And it was when I figured out it was Cliff, I was like, okay, where are you? Because this was not the first time I've gotten a call from a first responder in the ER. And it took me about halfway down from where I was to the ER to figure out that he didn't bring in a patient, he was the patient himself. And so obviously kind of an unusual situation for an outpatient therapist to show up in the ER
Yeah,
for a patient.
certainly not never, but yeah.
Right.
Fairly unusual.
And being the local and where he's been around for so long, I mean, it was obvious that everyone was kind of aware of what was happening. So I wasn't able to see him, but they were letting him call me. So I was like, I'm here to help in any way that I can.
But you have very little data to really go on other than your initial assessment.
Just enough that he called me. You know, I was
right
so
before
happy.
his crisis was about to happen.
Well, it was actually we're in the middle of the crisis now.
Right, okay.
Yes.
No. The original time you met him was right before a crisis. So the version of Cliff you're getting, your baseline,
less than 24 hours.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy he felt safe enough to call me. And my number was the one number that he took out of his phone when they let him take his numbers. So he had his wife's number and then my number, called me, and I was so happy that he did. So I talked to him for a while. I'm like, all right, we're going to figure this out. I'm going to work with whoever I need to work with. So when I went home, did some more research, was looking into facilities, and he actually mentioned the COE a couple days later. So it was probably on day 3 or so of his inpatient stay. And I was like, let me call there, let me do some research. So I was able to talk to them, and they actually had an opening coming up that following week. And like, if you can help facilitate an intake over the phone for a half an hour, then we can get him here. I was like, all right. I called up there. I talked to the social worker that had his case, and we were able to make that happen, and he was able to get out there the next week. So, yeah, I was so grateful to be a part of that in the COE. He was able to contact me from there.
To have your clinician involved so deeply in that process probably sped things up for you, because if you leave it up to, it's hard on a peer support team who's never sent anybody to it and they don't have like a procedure to follow or contacts, right? So let the clinician people speak clinician to get all the paperwork done.
Well, and there's a lot involved getting someone into the center. I mean, there's
probably
insurance,
any
time
place,
off,
not just one specific, right?
It's an actual process to get somebody in there.
Yeah, I was able to do all of that with them ahead of time, since I had his verbal permission to do that, and then just helped coordinate that. So it was, being able to speak and give that warm handoff from a clinician standpoint, kind of where everything's at. It worked out perfectly, and it was such a great learning experience for me. I hadn't sent anyone there prior to that, so I was so happy to learn about what an amazing facility that is and what they offer.
It is. It's an amazing place. And Cliff, let's talk about it. You said you were there for 37 days. Obviously, you've continued therapy into EMDR. We've spoke about a little bit.
Yeah.
So take us through that.
That first day or so, it's scary. It really is. But
take me to walking in there, though. Like literally, you walk.
Walking through those doors.
You walk in. You're like, okay, now what? And I'm guessing you go to like a little window. You sit down. You talk to. Like, walk me through it.
So actually, most people fly and they get picked up. I drove. I love to drive.
Did you drive yourself?
I drove myself.
Okay.
By yourself?
By myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
For a guy who disassociates, I don't know that I would have supported this.
So here's the thing. When I was at when I was in the hospital for the 6 days in that psych unit, the doc that I met, and I cannot think of his name right now, but when he first met me, I was literally sitting on the floor next to my bed in a ball, just out of it. 2 days later, he and I are sitting there playing chess, and another patient comes up that I had talked to, became friends, and he's like, hey, I don't mean to interrupt, but I got to tell you, Cliff, I called my mom's today, and he hadn't talked to her in 6 months because he'd been on a bender and was ashamed of it. He goes, you're the one that talked me into calling her, and I'm so glad that I did. I'm reconnecting with her. And then another patient comes over, and it's like I just took them, and that doc was like, holy crap, I'm watching a patient who 2 days ago was a ball on a floor, and he is helping these two other guys in this facility that, he doesn't understand first responders. I got some sleep, I got some food, and I tell you what,
made a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yep.
From there, it was, I get to the COE. I drove myself out there, which, was not bad. I was good with it. It took more convincing for my kids than it was my wife or my clinician or, just because they were scared,
And they were in full support of you going for inpatient.
Oh, absolutely.
How old were they at the time?
Well, this was just
a couple years ago.
2 years ago, a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago. So my oldest is 30, my youngest is 25. So
So they have fully formed prefrontal cortexes and understand all of this.
They're way smarter than me. I mean, no, they understand
Obviously, they're sending you to get good help.
I get there, I drive there. My intake time was 9:30 at night. So I get there a little bit early. I pull in, I park, have no clue where I'm supposed to park, but I get there. They go through my truck. They go through my luggage, basically strip search you, do a cavity check. It's all there. I mean,
they're very thorough.
they're going to make sure that you're not bringing anything in that you're not supposed to.
Right.
So now you feel a little defeated from that. And it's like, oh, my God, what did I ate myself into?
Talk about tearing yourself down and then building you back up.
Yeah.
Right?
So then, they put you in this big bunk room. It's, it's midnight. Guys are sleeping. And it's like.
You don't want to wake anybody.
I didn't sleep. I didn't
feel
sleep
like a
at all.
probie?
Yeah. It was worse.
Yeah.
It was worse. So I got up and I'm walking around. Like, I just can't sleep. I'm standing there. And a guy from Colorado comes up and he's like, hey, you're new here? I go, yeah. He goes, well, here, let me give you a tour. Let me show you around. Let me talk to you. And he walked around for 2 hours with me. And
this is at midnight.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gave you the in-service.
Nice.
He did. And it
Fire
was,
guy to fire guy.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
this is where we do this. His coffee's here. Yeah, I can picture this guy.
We walked around. He showed me the fire pit there, the famous fire pit that's where the healing really happens between the guys. But
that's their version of the coffee table, I'm sure.
Yeah. And that helped. The next day was rough. I just couldn't get myself around. Another guy from California comes up. He's like, hey, come on, you need to go with me. I thought he worked there. Grabs my hand. He's like, come on, you're going to go with me. He gets me into my class, the group therapy that I'm supposed to be in. He takes off. I think he works there. No, he was supposed to be in a different one, and he's seen me, came and got me.
It's a brother taking care of the brothers.
Yeah. They were there doing that, feeling that exact same way.
That's what I mean.
3 days ago, and they're like, somebody did this for me, I'm going to do this for him.
Paying it forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I met guys from all over there. I mean, and I stay in contact with a lot of them. I mean, Virginia, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, California, Alaska, and Hawaii, all at the same time when I was there. And I stay in contact with them. I text with them all the time.
I'm sure there's a fraternal feeling to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
And
you went through some shit together.
Yeah.
When you go through bad things with people, you tend to bond with them. So tell me about what you do for 37 days. It couldn't have just been hanging out and talking around a fire for 37 days.
It's 6.5 days.
What's the curriculum?
6.5 hours every day of therapy. Different subjects that,
When you say therapy, it's a generic form of you're walking into different things for 6.5 hours throughout the day.
Yes. It's helpful. And then you also you have your own clinician that you meet with a couple days a week, not for a long time, but they track your progress and see how things are going. And then you actually do not everybody does it, some substance abuse or alcohol, but you do a trauma therapy. And that's where I was able to process that call and realize that it wasn't the call. It was something else. It was the resentment that I had towards the guy that pulled me off that scene. And
is this where a lot of these epiphanies came from? Because you're very well sorted out now and how you've gone through life for the last probably 15, 20 years, right? Do you think that inpatient treatment helped you organize that stuff, create your list of what's going on with me, accept it, and then kind of create a plan to move on?
Yes.
Okay.
I really do. I think that was a key. And, it's not like when you go there and you have a therapist telling you need to do this. Right. And it's not like that when you see your own therapist. Amanda doesn't tell me how to do things. She knows the answers in me. She just helps me.
She guides you to those answers.
Yeah, she helps me pull it out, because we're all stubborn.
Oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. And we just have to have our eyes open. Sometimes it takes a little bit more. Yeah. She has to hit me with a metaphorical shovel.
Yes.
Yeah, you can use the metaphorical one and he's BSing you. You got something to get it out of the way.
But yes, that was a huge part of getting right.
You get all this stuff sorted. You get it to where you're having your epiphanies. You got a game plan. Talk about now coming home. A lot of the people we talk to, things go real good, and then we come home, life hits again, right? So, you're not in the cocoon.
They call it the honeymoon phase.
The honeymoon phase, right? Yeah.
I hate surprises. I have to know exactly how things are going to happen. Sure. And it's tough because we don't always have that, but, we work through it. We adapt and overcome.
Exactly how you feel.
Yeah. So when I was there, when I'm getting closer to knowing that I'm leaving, I kept asking, well, how do we integrate back into life? Well, we teach you this stuff. They didn't really teach you well enough, and that's the drawback. But one of the guys I became really good friends with, if he would have had a shovel, he would have beat me with it a couple times, because I told you that I drove out there. Don't ever let a guy drive, because you have that, my truck's there, I can leave at any time.
Right. I'm thinking about all these problems as he's telling me this. I'm like, wait a minute.
There was one night I remember I walked up to the office where the behavioral tech's office is at, I was pissed because they weren't there. I wanted my keys. I was leaving. Nobody was around. I'm banging on the door. Nobody showed up. And I was furious. I walked out of that office and I walked over to my truck. I couldn't get into it. I laid down on the ground and rolled under my truck and laid there and fell asleep. It's in Virginia,
Very reasonable.
Yeah, it's like, come on. It's so stupid saying it now, but I mean, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
I told my buddy that, and the next day I found a note on my truck. It said, "Don't leave, asshole."
Perfect.
And
Typical
I still have
there.
that sticky note at home.
Good.
Yeah, he's a great guy. It was his second trip there. He spent 89 days there.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he went through a lot. Great guy. But the biggest thing that he really beat into my head was aftercare.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do your aftercare. He didn't. Hence why he came back.
Yeah.
You
Well, he
have
has
to
the
do it.
evidence to support why you should.
Yeah, and when you have 3 literally failed attempts at suicide, gun jammed, misfire on a bullet, his wife knocking the gun out of his hand, those are. Love the guy. I love him. He's an amazing guy. He beat it into my head. You have to do your aftercare. So I took that literal. I came home. When I came home, I think within a day, I had my first appointment with Amanda. I still take the meds that they had you on because they put you on meds. Mm-hmm. They get you figured out.
And some people do need them. And in your situation,
and you know what? For
need
me,
it.
I don't know if I need them anymore, but I know how I feel now versus how I felt then, and I'm not going back to that. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's where I'm at. If I got to take these meds, I got to take them.
Now, Amanda, weigh in on that a little bit. With the medications, is it common for him to feel the way where he feels adjusted and to have this feeling of I might not need them, but to be responsible and over time kind of consider this with the goal of if he wants to be off meds, be off meds?
Absolutely, depending on what all they're for. Some meds are used for more than one thing. There's some hypertension meds that are also used for anxiety. There are some that are used for nightmares. There's a lot of things that can be used a little bit off-label, but at the end of the day, I think he's got the right focus, which is staying steady, right? Mm-hmm. And we change very few variables at a time so that we can see what's actually having an effect, but it's kind of also, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So it's weird to say, well, I feel better, maybe I can just stop taking this, because there's not only stigma around medications, there might be other side effects he just doesn't like about it, right?
Right.
So what advice can you give people listening to not answer the call of your body? Well, I feel better now. Well, you probably feel better because you're balanced.
Right. Yeah. That means they're working, but also, staying in touch with your prescriber, talking about it with your clinician. You can always step down on medication to see if you still continue to feel good. I mean, a lot of medications, especially antidepressants, you shouldn't be just going off cold turkey anyway. So really being out loud about it, talking about it, and making sure that we're not just trying to find a problem.
Right.
When they're not necessarily a problem, they can be really helpful. We know that there's biological components to this as well as environmental components. And when you work in a chronically traumatic environment, it's going to change our physiology. So when it takes years for that to rebalance, to recover, so we're still learning, as you know, with the different clinicians that are working on all of that from a chemistry level to the stellate ganglion block shot that he hasn't had a chance to mention yet that he had done there, and all the research that's going into that chronic trauma is going to change our physiology. So medications can be used to make things more tolerable, right? But to think that we're going to go from not being well at all to I'm fantastic, none of us were that way to begin with.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
Right. So meds are really about finding a balance, and it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah. Because what might work for Mike doesn't work for me.
Correct. Yeah.
Based on our genes, our situations, whatever, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That's the same with food.
Absolutely.
I might respond poorly to milk.
Right.
Right. It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, there you
go.
Right. So talk about, we're seeing Amanda, you were talking to her, and then did a little bit of EMDR. So we want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
EMDR it's tough. It really is.
Give everybody a little context. We tend to bring this up often, but it's a tough one. So what is it in your opinion? I want to hear Cliff's version of what EMDR is and what they put you through.
I honestly don't really have words to describe it other than it just surprised me when I've had 2 sessions of EMDR, and both of them were just like all of a sudden it was happening.
What was it? What was happening?
I don't know. I was super agitated and activated. Okay. I'll use my word.
Use the clinical term.
And Amanda,
I'm
were
not
you
a
the
clinician.
practitioner
I don't have
providing
to.
the EMDR?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was at therapy one day, and I was doing consistently 2 to 2.5 hour sessions every day. I would go in, and this one turned into a 4-hour session, and the EMDR was like a lot, and it turned out it was. I really don't remember a whole lot of how I got to it.
Maybe Amanda can fill us in. What is it, and how did you apply this to our friend?
So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Eye movement is kind of the old school way. Some people still do that. It's very effective. My eyes don't like to track, and I find so many first responders with their probable ADHD want to squirrel away to anything, so I usually have to have them close their eyes. So I use a tapping technology called BiTap. I like them because I can control them on my phone, just the pace at which they are hitting and how hard. I'm less protocoled with mine because I find most first responders, if they actually are like, oh, we're going to do it on this day, they're like, I think I'm going to be sick that day. So rather, I kind of am more free associated with it. And if it shows up, like, hey, we've got this thing, you want to just go there.
Mid-session, you're like, hey, I think you'd benefit this. You want to try this out?
Right, and I talk about it early on. So we talk about the difference between the logic left brain, emotion right brain, and core beliefs, and that core beliefs and logic don't talk. So we can believe things that are not logically true, but we believe them at a much deeper level. So not to get too far into this, but most of those core beliefs that we're battling came way before we were first responders, right? A big one that's a universal in all of our people is, I'm responsible for everything. Right? And that one is usually created around 4, 5, 6 years old from when we learned that. So our response, kind of like going and hiding under a truck and falling asleep, is more consistent with the age at which it was created. So we're not talking to our chronological age self when we're doing EMDR. We're often going back and giving those younger versions of us what they need.
When the operating system was updated then to create the process it's going to run.
Correct. Trying to get to that touchstone memory. The farther back we can get, the more of the network we can get, the more of the activating situations we can desensitize and get him more into his chronological self so that, because he knows exactly what to do. He knows how to talk to a 6-year-old, right? He's been a dad. He's been a first responder. He's been a firefighter for so long. He knows how to talk to them, but he didn't get what he needed back then. Through all sorts of situations. So that's what we were able to do, is go back in our neural networks, which is where all of this still lives. So EMDR, yes, it's very intense because we are going into the things our brain has been working so hard to protect us from for our entire lives. Often we don't even remember it because, again, our brain's trying to protect us. But once we feel that sensation physically, we can float back to wherever it was and give that part of us the information it hasn't had access to, which is what today us knows. So that's kind of the long and short of EMDR.
Is it safe to say that it's like that file system is so exhausting to activate, and then for him to access that tired feeling is that after it's a mental, it's a huge concentration. It's like you hear about chess champions when they're in the middle of it and they're using so much brain power and they're just passing out after, basically.
Oh, absolutely. I had one guy come to and he's like, why does it feel like I just learned calculus? And it had been like 30 minutes of reprocessing. So it is extremely hard work. We're using the same system that our body uses during REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, to reorganize information from short-term to long-term, using both logic and emotion brain to process things appropriately, to reprocess and give old things new information.
With the end result being we're going to take something, a situation that caused the trigger, and then we're going to go back there after we get both sides of the brains going. You use like a tapping thing in people's hands to stimulate both sides of the brain because you need basically touch on both sides.
Right. Keeps both sides online.
Rhythmatically, right?
Correct.
And then you enter that state, talk about it, go through it with the goal of desensitizing your response to the discussion around this thing that's your trigger.
Right. Our brain knows what it needs. A lot of times, I actually don't talk a whole lot during EMDR. It's a lot of, well, what are you noticing now?
Right.
I find a lot of first responders are very somatic experiencers, meaning that we feel it in our body, but right, we all have enough medical knowledge to just explain that crap away. So that, oh, well, yeah, I just need some Tylenol. I just need this. I'll just shove it down and deal with it later.
I did EMDR myself. You'd be surprised the emotions that come up out of nowhere when we're doing these things, right? And then, like you talked about, I can't even say how tired you are when you get done. It's insane.
For me, it was like having a hangover for a week.
Yeah.
I needed to eat. Like, you know what I mean?
Man.
I needed like that next day, like, give me like a McMuffin.
I couldn't.
One
I
of
couldn't,
those situations.
I couldn't eat. I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
But it works. It's worth the journey to go through it.
Yeah, I haven't heard
absolutely,
anybody.
yes.
The worst I've heard from somebody is they didn't feel it was effective as they heard. But it does. It's a might help, can't hurt situation that I hear with a pretty good batting average.
You know, for me, the second one I think was worse because
Why worse? What do you mean? More effective and it was tougher on you, or
it was actually at this last shift conference in Traverse City. The last day, the last presenter of the conference, he started out. You know who Daniel Sundow is?
Yep.
Dan's a great guy. They had this loud music playing and just a video of all of Dan's artwork going. The artwork, I've seen a lot of it. I've got 2 of Dan's books. They're awesome. It was the music. And now I know that song was what was playing when I remember having that gun in my mouth in my truck that night. And it just
Took you right back.
I literally was in my truck. I was sitting there and I started to freak out a little bit, like,
you were disassociating again and like picturing yourself wholeheartedly.
Completely.
Re-experiencing flashback.
Yep.
Yeah, it was bad. And one of our part-time guys and our fire chief was sitting at another table that were up there with us, and they noticed something was going on. Luckily, I had my therapist. I think I take my therapist everywhere now. It seems like.
Oh, you're very available.
You know?
I'm very impressed.
Yes, I'm very impressed.
I want to see what insurance you have.
Yeah.
Well, that's through the state. My wife
Does it
works
cover
state of
mileage?
Michigan.
He's got the gold card of insurance
Yeah,
somewhere.
this is
Yeah.
amazing.
So it happened, and I really don't remember leaving there. We were outside. We did an EMDR right there. Grand Traverse Bay was right in front of me.
That probably helped. to be honest
Greatest
with you.
EMDR spot. in the
Yeah,
movie.
like, that's
Yeah.
pretty neat.
Yeah, but it was pretty intense, and that one was the harder one because it was triggered by something, and it took me where
You were right in the moment
Yeah.
of it.
Oh, it
Luckily,
was-
you had a wait. You didn't have to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
yourself down, maybe take a bunch of Xanax or other medications or do whatever you needed to do to get down. You actually had a clinician there to help you, which is very beneficial.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Piggybacking off of that, about the different triggers and things like that, you had mentioned earlier that you live in the same city that you work. I'm the same way. I live same city. There's always that intersection. There's always that house. There's always that whatever, that reminder, right? Take me through that. What would you say to others who live in the same city that they work in and have the same kind of journey that you've been on?
Even not just working in the city you work in, without a journey like that, it's got to be tough sometimes.
The biggest thing I can say is talk to people, talk to someone. Because if you live in that city you work in, you're going to be on similar incidents. You're going to be on calls that you know people. I mean, early in my career, I was on the call where my father-in-law passed away. It happens. And, you know, it's a shitty situation, but you just deal with it. That's what we did. Now, the biggest thing is talk. If you can get that stuff out, it does make it easier. You can process it and live with that stuff instead of just hiding it.
Give me an example when you say just talk. Do you mean incessantly when you walk in the kitchen? Hey guys, got to get this off my chest. Like, give me and I'm joking.
Well, no, but that
sometimes
can happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, if you got the right crew.
Yeah, but it also
Firehouse
can be detrimental. You have somebody that says, "Hey man, you look like something's not right today. Is everything okay?" When they're not prepared to hear, "No, I'm not okay." This actually happened. One of my guys asked me that, and I said, "No, I'm not okay," and he froze.
Yeah.
And he literally, in our kitchen, spun in a circle and walked out the door.
Yeah.
Didn't say another word.
And I never even thought that would happen until I took his suicide writ class, and you bring this up. Like, you better be prepared for somebody to say, "No, I'm not okay."
Yeah.
And I never thought about that like you'd have to be prepared, because I'd be like, okay, what do we got to do? But I say that not in the moment. I say that not having the stress that human being is taking on in the moment. So I don't want to be hypocritical.
We're not only conditioned to say we're okay, but we're also conditioned to just take for granted that the person is going to go, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Hey, how you doing? Not good. Wait a minute. That's not the default
no,
mode. You're supposed to say, "I'm great." And you?
I'm fine. What does fine really stand for? Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Wow.
Yeah.
We are so messed up.
Did you come up with that?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to take credit for it. But, we're the biggest liars and the best actors in the world.
When we want to avoid something, you ain't
Absolutely.
kidding.
When
Homework and feelings.
When somebody says to me they're fine, I look at them, I know you're not. You're lying to me. Because I've been there.
Right.
I used that word for years. I don't use it anymore.
I think people who have gone through things like you went through, your bullshit meter is way more sharp than anybody else. Like you can look at somebody and just go, that person's not okay. You almost have that, all right, don't bullshit me. I see this. What's going on? I think when you've been in that spot and you've been that low and you've been in that dark place, you can see it in other people.
You can see it in their eyes.
Yes.
The way that they hold their posture.
Yes.
If it's slightly different than what it was 2 days ago, you know something's up.
Yeah.
There is a significant level of detail we have about these people we live with, 10 out of 30 days. It's amazing what I can tell. If you gear up anybody on my crew, full gear, and I just watch them walk across the lawn towards the fire, I'll tell you who it is.
Yeah, you know who it is.
Stride.
Depending how you walk through that door, I can tell how your day's going.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like
we've done this enough. We've
done this enough to where you can
this
walk
guy
through that
just
door.
came off duty.
Yeah.
I knew when he walked in, or when I walked back in, I could see it on him. He's like, I knew he was going to have a good day just because I could feel it.
Yeah.
I was ready to go.
Yeah.
I had a long drive. I had a lot of
run.
coffee on the way. It was tough getting out the door, though. So I do want to talk about, the power of speaking up. And you wrote an article and put yourself out there. So let's talk about this article that you decided. You didn't just put it in like your local magazine. Firehouse Magazine, correct?
Firehouse Magazine. So every department, people will print off an article and put it on the board.
Yeah.
I was standing there one day and I'm looking and I'm like, oh, Chief Gary Lutwig wrote the article, The Art of Eating Our Own.
Yeah.
Well, I read that and it like hit me. And I'm like, there's more to that. I typed that article in the notes on my iPhone. Right then and there. I sat down in my office.
Or just some scratch, right?
And 40 minutes and I was done. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I read it. I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah, this isn't bad.
Dissociated an article.
Yeah. So, it was like, I don't know. So it took me a little while and I decided, you know what? I'm going to figure out how to do this. I'm going to put this out there. People need to know this. And really what it's about, it's more how you feel when you come back. That's really what it is for me. That's why I wrote it. I felt like in the word that I used, and maybe I shouldn't say it this way, but I felt like a leper. Like nobody wanted to be around me. They were going to catch what I had. Nobody talked to me when I came back. The first day I walked into the station, I wasn't on duty. I was going in to drop off return to duty to the chief. And one of the guys was sitting there in our dispatch. He literally like threw himself back in the chair. He's like, holy shit, you're back. He had like a horrified look on his face.
What do you think you attribute that to?
I don't know. That's what I have learned.
Is it shock to not know what, like they don't know what to say?
Well, what I've learned is I'm not going to put words in other people's mouths.
Sure.
And for me, I don't know what his feeling was. I don't know what caused it. But what I do know is that when I did go back to work, people didn't talk. I literally had people say later on when I started confronting people, why won't you talk? Well, I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I didn't want to trigger you. And
right.
I didn't want you to go off.
They have no context.
And actually, shoot yourself. And it's like, okay, so listen, if you really think that one thing you're going to say and that one conversation you're going to have with me is going to do that, you're a little full of yourself. I have gotten a lot of help, and I'm sorry if you think that you're going to impact my life that much by saying, hey, man,
right,
welcome back. Mm-hmm. I didn't even get that.
Yeah.
It was, but I don't blame the guys. I don't. They didn't know what to say, so they didn't say anything.
Yeah.
The big thing is, do you guys transport?
Yeah.
So when you pick up a patient, that's the first step of getting them help and getting them better. We can talk to a patient no matter what. We have that empathy for them. Mm-hmm. But we don't have it for our guys.
Yep.
We are hardest on our own.
Well, I understand that. But if I was a patient, you're going to talk with me. We treat strangers better than we treat each other.
Right. Well, we can avoid the rest. It's such a short dose. It's like when people tell me that Bluey, you ever watch the cartoon Bluey?
No.
Okay, the cartoon Bluey, what is the mom and the dad? Chili and Bandit.
Bandit, yes.
Best parents in the world. Like, oh my God, they're the greatest. It's a 7-minute episode. I can be the greatest parent ever for 7 minutes. So you could be the best conversationalist in the back of an EMS rig for an hour. And then you go back to the station and like, oh, F that guy and this guy and I get guy.
it. I do. And like I said, I don't blame anybody. We don't know.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
But to really think that you're going to say one thing that's going to trigger me to leave and just go.
So what's your advice? What's the first thing that should be said to somebody who came back?
Even if they don't know what to say, it's as easy as saying, I'm glad you're back, but I really don't know what to say to you.
Yeah.
And then I can say, it's okay. It's okay that you don't know, instead of being in silence. So the article was more about that, because when we come back, there are people that don't come back to work. There are people that don't come back, that didn't get the help, and they take their life. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, I was a lucky one.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I didn't have that support that I hear a lot of other departments and guys do, but I also hear the same thing. You know, people didn't talk to me. They didn't know what to say. Or even worse, the guys that are retired that come back and don't have that, because retirees can go there. And I met a lot of them there. So the big thing is talk. I said it earlier, talk.
I think you're revealing a lot to that cognitive behavioral therapy, that classic CBT, which is just talking to your therapist and then also just connecting with the people around you. Now, if I was to reverse the question, what would I say to somebody who had to do that? Hey, man, what's up? I think just, hey, what's up is a way to open up, like, hey, I'm here to at least have a conversation rather than to make it awkward. It's the removing of the awkwardness, maybe.
I would walk into the room, and people would like look and turn around and walk away, or I'd sit down at the table and everything went silent.
Yeah. I heard a funny story where somebody, they wore the shirt that said, I went to Firefighter
Sad Camp.
That's a great way to use humor. And, you know, he was doing it. He's like, all right, let's talk about
honestly,
it.
Honestly, one of the first guys we helped go to the center came back with the T-shirt on. I looked at it, and I kind of looked at him, and he goes, "It's okay, you can laugh at it." I go, okay,
it's
you know,
and that's not for everybody.
I was there, and we called it that. It's Firefighter Sad Camp. It is.
It's almost like you want to introduce that humor. Like, can we just talk about this?
Like in typical firefighter fashion. You know what I mean?
Should be.
Like,
you know, and it's a term that I heard out there, and I used it in my article. Was it's not the Trauma Olympics. We're not getting a gold medal for who has the worst trauma. It doesn't work that way. We all have a trauma, and it could be one person's trauma is worse than another one's in their eyes, but it doesn't matter.
Well, the summary, it's not the incident, it's all the things that happen before and after that add to the impact of that trauma.
Yeah.
So give it a quick plug. If people listening want to go to that article, what's the name of the article? And it's in Firehouse Magazine.
So it's actually on firehouse.com, and it's Letting Them Rot.
Okay.
That's the name of it.
And we'll put a link in the episode description.
It's out there for anybody.
It's worth reading. It's a relatively short article. You're reading in 5-10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's you give a really good insight, and you wrote it at a time where it was very passionate of you. So I'm glad that you archived that thought. And a lot of people journal and do a lot of things, but it had a place to go to then also touch other people and be like, hey, think about this. Because you're not the last person who's going to come back to an engine house, a firehouse, a police station, correction, anywhere that's going to be the last person to an inpatient facility that needed help.
Right.
Give yourself space to read it.
Yeah.
It needs quiet. It needs some calm. It's kind of hard to read in the middle of shift because it really needs that space to sit with it.
Yeah.
And the feelings that come up.
You can do it on your phone, too, which is nice. You can just pull it up anywhere, anytime.
Yep.
I know for a fact that one guy that read it, I believe currently is still at the Center of Excellence because he read it. He spoke with somebody, got help. They sent them out there.
You're already making a difference.
So for me,
that's everything right there.
Yeah, the goal isn't to get people to go to inpatient treatment, but it's to get people to get the help they need.
Yeah, that's all it's about. You know, I never thought in my career I would be on this side of mental health. I mean, seriously, I always thought anxiety, depression, come on. Whatever, just deal with it. Totally. Just deal with it. That's what I was taught.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's one of those things. It's not like that. And the biggest thing, talk to somebody. There's a point where somebody can come talk to me and say, and I will sit, I will listen, I will cry with them. I don't care. I don't care what time it is. And if it's something I can't handle, I've got resources for them. I will help them get whatever they need. I can make the call for somebody to get out to the COE. Whatever it takes, I'll do whatever it takes because I've been there, but it's just what we do. Mm-hmm. We help strangers in their time of need. Why wouldn't we help our brothers and sisters in their time of need?
Absolutely. That's amazing. I love it. This has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you very much for opening up. Really. Thank you for guys for making the trek out here. It's not like you're down the road here. We're downtown Detroit. You guys are from the mid-state. So thank you very much.
And thanks for sharing your story. I know it's not easy.
Yeah, dude.
It's not, but it's important that young guys can see that an old, crusty, beat-up, mean ass of a captain can talk about this stuff, then they can.
Absolutely.
Maybe some retirees can talk about it, too.
Well, I know there are some retirees out there that I've talked to. I know there are.
There's this one suffering in silence because they don't even have the opportunity to really bring it up anymore.
Yeah.
Once you're out of the engine house or whatever, we don't make this about firefighters, but once you're out of the business and you don't have the coffee time, you don't have the table time, the hangout time.
We actually lost a member of our peer support team. He was a retired guy from Lansing, and he ended up committing suicide after he had been part of our team, Didn't want to bother people with his problems, but he was going to help anybody else that he could. And then it got to that point he couldn't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I hate that.
Yeah. And it's tough.
If my story can help one person.
Well, you said, talking about it more, sharing experiences, remove the stigma. Let's keep talking and help people.
Absolutely. Great episode.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, bro.
I got to tell you real quick, there is one thing that I am pushing hard for. I'm trying to start with our department. I know there's some other people talking about it. We send our people for psych evals. Most places do. So
when they get hired or every
when
year?
They get hired.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
When they get hired. I'm against it. It's a ridiculous thing. And I'm going to tell you why that is. Because what do they compare it to? Do they go back and say, in 2 years, say,
it's certainly very
change?
subjective. You have an hour with somebody who can tell you whatever they want. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't we change it and say over your 1 year probationary period, you've got 4 sessions that you're going to meet with a clinician. What that does is you don't get to know what they talk about.
No.
But what that does is it normalizes talking to a professional.
Right.
We can talk around the table and bullshit all we want. Talking to a professional is that help that we need early on. We need to instill that in our people when they're young so that through their career, when they start seeing this bad shit happen and it starts getting to them, they have that normality of talking to somebody.
That feels like training rather
Absolutely.
than healthcare. And I mean in a good
Well,
way.
but
no, you got quarterly training, and that's part of it's checking in with this type of person to help you maintain your resilience. You don't have to sell it as an evaluation.
No, it's not.
You're
It's
trying
not.
to give
It's
them the
not.
tools they need to be resilient.
Well, I mean,
Yes.
we have RIT training. That's to save yourself in a bad spot. Why don't we have it for
I like it
mental
as
health?
training.
Yes.
It's an
Well,
it's a self-assessment.
and as a probationary coming in, I'm going to make you do 4. I can't make you do it after that.
Yeah.
But it's a condition of your employment.
It also shows that
complete
how
them.
serious that admin feels about the mental well-being.
I'm beating my chief with this. I'm really pushing it. And
I'm sure their
and
heart's
he's
in the right
starting-
place, too.
He said to me, he says, well, is there studies out there that show anybody else did it? I says, no. I said, but were there studies out there when people started sending people to have psych evals done? No. Somebody just started it and other people followed. Let's start it.
Yeah. Maybe do a trial run for a year or two.
So- Be the
first.
Let's try a couple of probies. You measure it for 5 years. You see what's what.
Yeah.
These are great ideas. These are really good
Love it.
ideas. Well, keep it up, man, and have a great day.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. And make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and have a great day.